Roll the first one.
Stop.
Ouais, je vais justement là.
Ouais.
Ah, c'est là.
Ça, voilà.
Well, it will actually be on your converging angle, I think. But you know, if it's something along these, as they're looking to each other, and it's just shifting like this, you're just holding the two.
And I'm going to ask Tracy, where am I out of shot? Are my feet out of shot here? Trace? My feet out? Am I in shot?
So the lighting in, with the light turned on, it will be seen from this point of view first.
As little as possible. Because when you give the face more, then everything changes again. And now we have, I would say, hold the same. Oh, his face inside, we forgot.
Okay, everybody still, please.
You got to have a dream, you know, in life. Like a lot of my early work was mimicking somebody, you know, like trying to remember how I saw Jeffrey Unsworth light it, or how I saw John Leake or George Lowe or Graham Lind or Carl Kaiser or any of the men that I trained under, how they would do this scene. So I'd walk on a set and think, now, how would George light this, you know, how would Johnny do that room, you know, and not how I would do it. So you eventually find your own way of telling the story, and that's what you're doing with cinematography, is you're telling a story. Try and, where possible...
Peter's storytelling began in Australia with a number of very successful films, including Caddy and The Irishman. 3 times he's been named Australian Cinematographer of the Year. His growing Hollywood reputation is driven by his work on Mr. Johnson, Rich in Love, Alive, Black Robe, and the multi-Academy Award-winning Driving Miss Daisy. Peter is much in demand for the richness and invention of his photographic imagery.
I like to take down the...
Robby Muller was named by Film Comment magazine as the greatest Dutchman with light since Vermeer, referring to the subtlety and complexity of his lighting. His credits include The American Friend, Down by Law, Repo Man, Paris, Texas, and Mystery Train. Robby says he prefers working with independent directors rather than the studio system. Directors who are more in tune with his own sensibilities, like Wim Wenders and Jim Jarmusch. Robby's films often deal with more esoteric and personal visions of reality than those of mainstream cinema.
When I did one set,
I was always attracted to stories that had something to say about life. The consequence of that was try to look for directors and the stories that really made sense for me, that really enriched my life too, that got me thinking about what life was about. And I was deafened by all the manipulation in film at that time done to get people in the cinema, to get box office. And some of it conflict enormously. It is another atmosphere, it's another state of mind doing that.
The masterclasses provided each director of photography with a similar set in a separate studio. Each set represented a lonely roadside cafe in the Australian desert at Christmas time, the middle of summer.
I would like to say that I want...
Josef Demian, head of the school's Department of Cinematography, supplied a brief script to be used in both studios. This required 2 scenes to be lit and filmed. The action in the second scene was to take place several hours later than the first. Josef also directed the 3 actors involved. The master classes allowed us to watch the technical and aesthetic choices made by the directors of photography, as they shared with us their knowledge and the way they view the world. Their brief presented some formidable challenges. The approaches each took to solve these were very different.
Considering the time that was offered to me, I thought, maybe better do the thing I know best. And I took it very seriously. I took it like really being on location. It was a beautiful set I visited the day before, and it's really very, very well done. My main concern was actually to make something that would lift the audience out of a set feeling, and try to do anything possible.
First of all, you have to have the picture in your head, because you walk into a dark studio and until you put the light on, there's nothing. You know, until you find the way to approach it. Where's the key going to go? How am I going to approach this? What's the most important thing I have to show in this scene? You should know that before you come in. You should be prepared. You've got to do your homework.
And did you want them in the sun or the shade? Like we can lose this
Peter's
umbrella.
homework has shown him that the biggest problem will be creating a believable daytime sky when the set has been built so close to the cyclorama. He's decided to set his tracking shot where he can avoid the cyc as far as possible.
It might be good to lay a dolly track along here. Does this cyc roll?
Yes.
Well, let's just see what we can, let's just do a lineup. We can probably whip the cyc back and get the art department to clear out this rubbish and maybe put it somewhere else, because we're not going to see it.
Use just the trees as a foreground.
Yeah. Let's have the actors in there now. Okay, so we move the table across a bit.
Yeah.
We'd have a clear shot of him there, right, where that Steve McQueen poster is there. That would be good. Right, and Natalie's standing up. She walks maybe from where he is.
The script has no dialogue. In scene 1, a woman and a man arrive at the desolate cafe in a state of some agitation. They sit. After some time, the man goes to make a telephone call.
And we see him sit down now. This foreground's a bit... That's it there. Okay, then he gets the idea to go to the phone and gets up.
Watching the block through, Peter realizes that to cover the action from his chosen camera position, he'll have to rearrange the set dressing.
Pan across, I don't think I need to move. I see him go through the door, but I can't see the bloody phone, so put the phone in the window.
Even though the art director has put the set together for you, it's not always exactly where the director needs it or where you need it to tell the story. So we had to move a few things around the blocking to suit the camera so that we could dress foreground pieces, oil bottles in the foreground and an old crank pump. Move the telephone into the windows where it was in a position where it was better seen for the actor later on. And move the tables where the actors had to sit in the foreground, cheated them around. And in fact, when we went to the reverse angle later on in the film, we actually moved them again to a different position. But because the camera's changed angle so much, you can't tell that it's been cheated. So it's an acceptable cheat. And film is an acceptable cheat, all of it. It's just the art of cheating, really.
I just accepted the situation as it was and didn't want to change anything, like it happens so often for me, because I typically come from very low budget and independent films. And so that's the way I went into this studio. I said, well, this is what we have to film. Let's get started with the stuff that we have.
Read the thing. Actually, I want to do as if it is a real situation where we are, like, say, we're shooting a bigger film and are forced to shoot in here now, so and reconstruct daylight. And I think through the course of things, we will discover what we can do. For instance, it is meant to be sunny. And the strongest lamp, the sunny lamp we have, is an HMI, but the rest is tungsten. So I think we might have to go on tungsten and change the HMI with a conversion filter, first of all.
That's the start. You can start now.
This is...
No, that's your start.
In Robby's masterclass, Joseph, the director, specified a tracking shot, which would start at the back of the studio and end at the cafe veranda. It would cover both exterior and interior.
I would say somewhere where those bags are, and enough distance so we don't bang the lamps in the pole.
Okay.
This posed a considerable lighting challenge.
We were in a very confined space. To get this blue sky and the sun, I had to make the sun, of course, but the sun would spill on the sky. And you cut it off with the sun, and you would do the sky with different lamps. But here, the cyc was so close to us, it was very difficult to cut it away. Anything that would be sent in front of the skyline would make a shadow on it. But it was supposed to have a light from the sun. That was the biggest difficulty, actually.
Robby's first shot starts as the couple arrives at the cafe. They sit down at one of the tables outside. If Robby lays his track as proposed by the director, the cyclorama will be prominent in the background of his shot for much of the time. But the track allows him to design a shot which will build atmosphere and examine character by tracking close to the actors. He accepts the challenge, and so will have to deal directly with the cyc problem, whereas Peter's track position allows him to virtually avoid the cyclorama.
You've decided very cleverly and pragmatically not to show the sky. Do you think you will see the sky ever in this coverage?
Oh, well, I hope not. For an Australian outback sky, this is definitely wrong. And I'd have the art department paint this sort of a cyan blue, graduated. And then I'd light it with blue light.
The place to put it is...
But for this masterclass, Peter makes use of what is available. He sets up the camera and track to minimize the effect of the cyclorama in his shot.
It does show the set, so it shows the setting.
The camera position means that the script action will be observed in a much wider shot than Robby's. Peter won't have close-up detail to build atmosphere, so he'll have to use different techniques for this, as we'll see later. As Peter starts to light, we see that he has already made certain preparations.
I took the liberty earlier to put these lights up here to give a basic overall daylight sort of fill. And I've got a 12K HMI I put outside the door to give us long shadows and the feeling of a big source like the sun a long way away. And because we're shooting with 96 film, and we found from our exposure latitude tests that we want to rate it at 320 ASA, I'm going to have to put a full CTO and plus a half CTO on that light to get it to be orange.
Peter's sun at 12K HMI with 1.5 CTO was set up on the steps outside the studio door to give it height and distance. The overhead lights he referred to were two 5K soft north lights with half blues on each to provide a daylight fill. Each had a black skirt to cut the light off the background. A third 5K soft light was set on the same angle as the sun to add to the key. This was left ungelled. Peter's track was laid behind the trees and debris at the back of the set. His shot would cover the action by tracking from right to left.
We'll get the video split hooked up first, maybe. So we've got 40-foot candles here, and we decided that 40-foot candles gives us 3.2. If I'm doing a big set, I like to work in foot candles because then it's consistent. Doesn't matter if I change the shutter speed or if I change filters, I need to have X amount of foot candles. Because of the doorway here, we've got no sunlight hitting the foreground, so we've got to put another shaft of light on the same angle as the other one to light the foreground.
The foreground shaft of sunlight is a 5K Fresnel with a half CTO. This has to be cut off the area already lit by the HMI sun and the 3 overhead soft lights, so there's no double shadow in the set.
Don't cut it off there. Good. Okay. Now, because the lamp's placed correctly, it gets the light on the tree, but you can still take the light off the Eat at Joe's sign. So we can do this technically if we want. We can read the amount of light we've got coming out of the key light, and that's about 80-foot candles. And then if I read the amount of light coming out of this light, I've got about 80-foot candles too. So that now these two lights match. And we've still got this petrol bowser in the way, but we don't want the shadow on the table because it detracts from the hot. Seeing we never see the petrol bowser, so we must just get rid of it altogether and bring it back in when we need it.
Repositioning the petrol pump into the background of the shot is important, as the pump helps to establish the purpose for the roadside cafe being there.
Whoa. How's that? Yeah, it's good if it gets a flare on it.
Yeah,
because that makes it nice and hot. Yeah, we want hot things. Well, how many foot candles did we say we had? We had nearly 100 foot candles, and we know that 100 foot candles at 320 ASA, we have T5. But because we're at an angle to the light, and because we want the light to be hot, we're choosing to shoot at 3.6. That means that I don't want the fill to be very bright at all. I want the fill to be at least 2 stops underexposed. So that means the fill light has to be 1.8, or in foot candle terms, 12 foot candles.
The fill is coming from the 2 overhead soft lights and from bounced cyc lights behind the camera. The 3rd overhead soft light serves a different purpose.
I'm using that as part of my key. I'm reading that along with the sunlight. So you can't believe your meter. That's the first thing you learn. A meter cannot tell you the exposure, because the exposure is dependent on a whole lot of factors, like what speed the camera's running at, what filters you have in, how you want them to look, bright or dark, what ASA you have in. There's a whole lot of emotional factors too that you want to come into play. But what you need to know is the mood and the ratios that you want to achieve. So in that ratio test, we found that 2 stops underexposed was a pretty good contrasty ratio. It wasn't really an exterior ratio. It's more like 2.5 stops would be a good exterior ratio. But what I want to do now is I want to introduce some golden light as if it's coming from the ground. So what I'm going to do here is get 2 separate light sources. One to shine up into her face there, right? So it's coming off the ground as if it's the sunlight bouncing off the outback. And that'll light her face there with a golden glow, and it gets underneath her hat. And the other one I'll put down here, and we'll hide it under these trees, so it lights his face, so we get a little bit of a glow out of that. And he's got a blue light coming from the side of his face, so if it's the blue sky, which is sky's always bluer further from the sun. So there's a bit of a mixture there. We've got to add a little bit of blue light over there on the background. In fact, we mightn't make it as blue as over here. We may make it a little bit whiter.
Peter made this effect by setting 1 5K Fresnel and 3 5K cyc lights on the rear cyc, camera left, with full blues on each. He then put a 5K Fresnel and 3 5K cyc lights on the right-hand side, closer to the HMI sun, with half blues on each. This established a very realistic look, quite different from Robby Muller's.
Around 4, 5, 6, because you have now front light, huh? That's different. Well, they don't change very much. The table is around 5, 6. I want to reconstruct also a little bit this outback feeling I had when I was shooting there, where the sky was pretty intense blue, the red sand. And I just played the game that you come there in the outback, and what do you have? The sun and the blue sky already. I want to be as close to outback feeling as I could, what I saw.
It's the same angle.
Robby's approach was perhaps more impressionistic than Peter's natural realism. Their interiors continued these themes. Peter's shot is wide. His interior will be seen at a distance through the cafe window.
Because the camera's so far away, you can get away with a slight angle shift. You know, it doesn't have to come exactly from this part of the earth that is lit. You can take it off to the side a little bit, and maybe or off to the side on the other side.
The man on the phone was cross-lit from inside the cafe window. Peter also discussed highlighting him by adding a shaft of light through the door. The room will be given an overall blue tinge to make it appear cooler than outside.
So we've got about 11-foot candles on that, yeah. Which looks about right, doesn't it? And what we're going to do is, instead of lighting him with a strong shaft of light, I'm going to put a strong shaft of light in the background coming through the door, so he'll be a silhouette. So his hat will now start to cut out against some brightly lit thing. So you've got to always consider like a checkerboard effect. Think in terms of black and white, not in terms of colour separation, where you get a clean profile against something. So you don't have poles or things running through people's profiles. And try, where possible, to silhouette things, to stagger them.
Inside the cafe, Peter set 2 misers, each with 216 diffusion and half CTO, to light the man at the telephone, as though this were reflected ambience from the ground outside. A 2K Fresnel with a quarter blue was bounced off a whiteboard in the back corner to add the cooler interior feeling. And a 5K Fresnel with a half CTO gave a shaft of sunlight through the side door, lighting the plastic strip curtain, the cash register, and the wall seen behind the telephone conversation. For his exterior, as well as the 12K HMI, the 3 overhead soft lights, and the blue cyc lighting already shown, Peter bounced 4 ungelled 5K cyc lights off the rear cyclorama to add fill. He set a 5K Fresnel with a half CTO, which represented sunlight for the foreground of his shot, and a flag which cut this light off the area already lit by the key. In front of the trees and anthills, Peter concealed 2 2K soft lights with full CTO and ND filters to balance their levels. These filled the actors' faces under their hats with a golden glow, as though reflecting from the hot sand. As well as lighting, Peter will build atmosphere by bringing in other devices.
You have to constantly be looking at the light and looking at the elements, because the cinematographer is in charge of all of the elements. It's sort of you're a magical person in a way. You can you have the power in cinema to make it snow, rain, lightning, water to come from different directions, dust. Whatever you want.
That out of a stone?
Yeah, that's all part of it. Like, they may be considered special effects by everybody, but they come under the cinematographer.
So Peter adds the illusion of heat haze, wind and dust to heighten the sense of reality.
Okay, here we go. So wind. Wind up to speed. Stand by. Oh, okay, it's okay. Okay, dust up. Standing by. Just like Peter James. So we don't want too much. Standing by. Peter James, we stand by. Yeah. Quiet on, thank you. Yeah. A bit more. Yeah.
Peter's using a zoom lens set at 30mm with a quarter pro mist filter. The stop is a third closed 2.8.
Action.
We thought to start on the tables and chairs and the tin fence, so you don't really know where you are, and then move the camera so that you, as the actors move, you pan to reveal the building into which they travel. Then you don't declare everything at once, and you slowly reveal where they are.
Peter wasn't entirely happy with the overall look of the scene.
It needed more contrast to me. It needed to be gutsier. The orange colour wasn't as orange as I thought it would be. But basically, we just needed more light on the set. But the moment you're in a studio and you're under control, the tendency is not to go contrasty enough. And this was a classic example of not going contrasty enough. Like, to eye, it looked quite good. But quite good is wrong. It should look bad. It should look more than... It should look extremely contrasty.
Okay. We are cutting that, yeah. I think, Tony Gavher, I think we have to continue that cut.
Robby has blocked through the action and designed the speed and timing of his tracking shot. He's now working with a gaffer to cut all the sunlight off the cyclorama so the blue cyc lighting won't be affected. This is taking a lot of time, and he has asked the camera crew and director to rehearse and polish the move while he continues lighting.
Yeah. Ignore me, start working, because I think it's good to do it parallel sometimes, because that we gain time.
I would suggest we have a movement for you as well to see that just roughly how the things are happening. Okay, can we have
I'm looking.
Catherine, ready? Action.
Robby is creating a front-lit daytime sky for a moving shot which shows a great deal of it. He could have persuaded the director to change the shot and made his lighting much easier. But Robby considers his own practical needs are far less important than those of the story and the director's vision, which must not be compromised.
I hate to influence the director in a sense and saying that's not possible, to only think of my job. But it gives me more satisfaction to have contributed to that story and the fantasy, the dream of the director, and supporting the story as saying, making a really beautiful image that nobody denies and everybody has applause at the dailies, but still deep in my heart I fooled him. I couldn't live with that. I really never did. I really never did.
Okay, our stop will be exact as 4, 5, 6 split.
The shot will also reveal a lot of the cafe's interior. As he plans his approach, we will see what importance Robby places on justifying his light sources.
We have our standard of the light outside is then we are going on see the tungsten color. So the light coming in will be the same. Normal. The same, yeah. It could be because it cannot be a direct light because the sun is shining in other direction. Yeah. The light that is coming in here is ambient light from the landscape.
I mean, if you cheated sunlight through there, you're really only maybe 30 degrees off.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
Would you get away with it?
Sometimes you get away. I once managed to have 2 different suns from 180 degrees different, but I followed very much what the sun does in the room. People didn't notice.
Tony?
Do we have another 5K soft light?
Yes, we do, indeed.
Because to make... It is daytime. They never will have, except for maybe the bar there, and the lamps on. This is like a drop in the ocean, and that's such a moment. Yeah. So when they are here, I want to have some light on him.
Robby's aim is to light softly with large sources. No direct sunlight would reach inside the cafe. Robby wants his interior to appear lit only by ambient light from the sky and the ground outside.
That's flooded.
Yeah. Tell Tony how much higher he has to come.
Yep, that's Tony. That's fine there. If you continue that back to camera right.
It hangs a bit through, huh? Yeah, I think we need a whiteboard because it doesn't give enough.
At the point where the man crosses the veranda, Robby wants reflected light from the sand to make the transition between the sunlight and the darker interior.
If the camera goes through it before he moves here, and then you have this bounce here from the sand in here that makes the transition a bit more even. Yeah, that's it, huh?
A miser is set up to give a rim light to the man at the telephone, and the phone itself is painstakingly lit.
Yeah. The problem is the telephone is red, and it's a color that always needs a bit more light as other colors to get well exposed.
Robby spent much time and effort on his interior. He set very low light levels and constantly evaluated the effect each source had on the others. He adjusted them often. He knew that the masterclass wouldn't allow enough time to achieve total satisfaction with his lighting, but he was determined to succeed in the mood he wanted to create.
I'm just checking a reflection on the telephone. I want to have a reflection on the telephone because it is too dark, and with a reflection you at least find it back. There. I was looking to create a situation where the moment the guy goes inside, that I didn't want, say, to break the mystery, to get you out of your dream. So I wanted to have it dark enough that it's believable, but do it in such as clever possible way that it still would work as if it was real, as if it is possible that that light is in there. It is like, I don't know what, the training in some art schools, you start with learning to draw every muscle in a person. And I have the old-fashioned opinion that it is very good to know how you hold your pencil or your brush. When you can do that, then you can start making abstractions and still not missing any essential thing in it.
Robby's sun at 12K HMI with full CTO was set as high as possible on the lighting grid, but it was still lower than Peter's, making Robby's shot later in the day. A half-stop net was added to keep the light level constant through the actor's move. The blue sky came from 4 5K cyclights and 2 open-face 2Ks set around the cyclorama, with a double layer of full blue on each. 2 5K Fresnels bounced off whiteboards on the sand to light underneath the veranda roof for the man's walk inside. For his interior, Robby set a 5K soft light through the back window. A 5K Fresnel shone through a frame of 216 diffusion at the front window. An Arri 800 was bounced off a whiteboard in the right-hand front corner of the cafe, and a black skirt cut the light off the actor at the telephone. A miser gave a rim light to the man's face. And another Arri 800 was placed on the floor, bouncing off the mirrored cabinet to provide a kick for the telephone. After several further rehearsals, Robby was ready to shoot.
Roll camera.
Set.
Action.
The zoom is set at 25mm and the stop is 4 1/3.
So practically you have here only one light source, that's the sun. But you can see on the shadow on the side, I didn't have the time to get rid of a lot of shadows because we just not enough time to do it. The faces are about 1 stop over. There's no filter whatsoever used on the camera. The sun is an HMI 12K. I just made, with the CTO, I brought it to the 3200, but it should have been a little bit more. The correction is not total. See, the bounce on the sand is coming under his head now. And the bounce on the sand also comes under the veranda, like here. Here's a part I wasn't finished there. I want to cut that off so you don't see that the bounce that is done there lights up the wall too much. I was afraid that the telephone would not come right or would be too dark. I made a little bit of a kick in the telephone. And let's see what was this on the 50, what it does there.
Okay.
Now we make it difficult. We do the whole thing with a longer lens. It might also change the rhythm of our movement, eh?
Slash.
But we will see.
We're going to roll, or should we?
Let's live dangerously.
Roll camera.
The stop is again 4 1/3 for the 50mm take on the zoom.
His face was stopped well under. Not the rim light he got, but there. And I would have made it a bit darker, but I was a bit careful because when you go too far under, you have nothing to talk about anymore. So I look at the light as it is, and then I make little shifts in it. And because they are not powerful and not attracting your eye, you know there is something there, but you cannot point out it right away. And I think that's the nice dreamlike things we are making. Huh?
Peter's second scene will take place after sunset, and the script will introduce a third character. This will influence the mood that Peter will establish for his shot.
So what we want to create here is a ambient glow of the twilight. So we want to get rid of all this yellow light because it's long past sunset, and this colour gel is a nice colour for twilight. And if you mix this with blue, it gives you a nice effect. So what we'll do is we'll drop the sight back again and put some lavender on every other one of these lights, like lavender on one, then blue on another, full blue on another, then lavender and full blue. So we get a mixture of lavender and full blue.
Yeah.
After the director outlines the script action, Peter discusses his approach to the shot.
It's still hot, but it's not no heat shimmer anymore because the sun has set, and the wind has died. So there's no dust. Everything may be covered in dust, but the dust is finished. But we do have the warm light from the inside shining out. So I would have to darken this light down, by 2 stops if I wanted to shoot at 2. Because I don't want it to be the correct exposure, I want it to be 2 stops dark. Or I can brighten the inside. Now brightening the inside is more difficult to do because we've got little lights and we'd have to get bigger lights to do the same job, and it would be a bit difficult because if this outside is 2, then we'd have to shoot at 4 and build the lights up inside to halfway 4 and 5, 6, which is quite a lot of light. So it's really going to make it easier for us to darken the ambient level. And this is sort of just really duplicating a natural situation. But at the same time, we can make it quite dramatic just by the colouring and the ambience. And we might also make this light this is a fluorescent light. And if we get a colour temperature meter, we want to read that and see what colour that is. In fact, if it's green, it might be quite nice to have a green light inside the cafe because it makes it tacky. It's 555.
The camera will be quite close to the cafe door. It will show the fluorescent light and also the corner where the man will make a second phone call. The different colours will create the ambience.
Just to shine back on the window. Okay, we got it. I don't want it to be a photo-corrected light. Is it a?
It is, but
how many watts is
it's
it?
75 watt photo corrected, but we can run it dim.
Give us 150 watt photo corrected, and we'll run it at.
We'll run it about 200 anyway. We'll just
about
run it up and down.
10 volts or something like that.
Yeah.
Against the Fresnel, yeah.
The outside practical is boosted and a 1K is concealed under the eaves above it. This will bathe the tables outside the door in a warm glow.
We've got almost correctly exposed backlight coming onto the people and onto the other guy over here, which is good. That's working out very well. Inside the place, we've got pretty flat lit fluorescent lighting, which is a little bit underexposed, believe it or not. It's the sort of lighting you would get from a fluorescent light in a cafe. So it's blue-green in colour. Now, sometimes it's nice to make those sort of things really bright. It's because fluorescent lighting is generally bright. And then when you make it really bright, it cleans itself up a bit, and just the shadows go green, and everything else goes sort of white. But here we've got it's just a bit underexposed. So it's actually going to be a much stronger in colour. You know, it's sort of dim it's not dark, but it's not bright either. So it actually should be a little bit brighter.
Peter's twilight ambience came from 4 5K cyclites on the rear cyclorama, with a mixture of full blues and pale lavender on each. A 5K Fresnel with half blue and pale lavender was set on the right-hand cyc. A 2K Fresnel with half blue on the left-hand cyc in the rear corner added a soft backlight. And a 5K Fresnel with half blue and pale lavender was bounced off the cafe wall for a twilight glow in the background of the shot. The 150-watt practical at the cafe door was run under voltage and was augmented by a 1K pup with a half CTO and 216 diffusion hidden under the eaves of the roof. Inside the cafe, another 1K pup with half CTO and 216 diffusion shone through the side window, lighting the third character outside. And a miser, also with half CTO and 216 diffusion, was set high in the front corner, directed at the man on the telephone. The general interior ambience came from 2 standard domestic 40-watt fluoros, the extra one set on a C-stand and directed towards the telephone. Finally, a 2K Fresnel with full blue and a white flame green was bounced off a whiteboard in the right-hand corner. The stop was 2.8 on a 25mm lens.
And action. We're using lavenders and blue mixed together, bouncing off a cyc. The skies are not correct in each of these films because of the amount of time it would have taken to get them right.
Peter ordered 2 different grades for this second shot. He preferred the darker one.
That's 4 points darker. The lavender is strengthened up a little bit with the with the grading. There's enough information there in the shadows to get the message, and we still see inside the shop okay, the guy on the phone's okay, which has a better feel to it.
So I put a filter, an extra filter in front of the sun. I made it warmer to indicate it's later in the day. So on the HMI is now a full correction plus half. So the sun will be a bit warmer. We have to cut now a little bit more on the background.
Yes, we'll just take it.
And I think we can take it all off there.
Yeah.
Also over the fence.
Yes.
Yeah, and let's put on the two sides there another blue again. So we have then 3 blues in front of it.
Yeah, or we from the movement we'll find out that she looked before. She doesn't want.
Joseph discusses the action for the 3 characters in the final scene, and Robby sets up the shot. Peter made his scene twilight. Robby's sun will still be in the sky, though very low.
I want to give the impression that the sun now is able to go behind and just touch something here. So,
Problem is you have light on.
Yeah, that's the next thing. We cut it from above.
Right direction for you? Would you like to go higher?
No, that's okay. That's okay. And just bring in the cutter just a little bit in here, a little bit. So this is still gets light from all the way there. So we forget this one. We just switch it off.
Yeah?
We switch it off. I think we can also lose the one on the floor there where you are.
Save it.
Yeah, save it. So, and now I like to bring down this one. So yeah, he had around EV7. I don't know what Unico says.
Yeah, it was a 7, yeah.
Could we move those 2 units, say 1.5 meter backwards, both of them? Be careful that we don't get direct light here. No, okay, that's it. And can I see one time more in the, yeah? Oops, there. Just a check. Thank you. 7. Well, we don't need that other lens. We go on for the moment, on exactly the same stop as we had before.
For this later scene, Robby moved his HMI sun further into the corner, lowered it and added a half CTO and a top-edge cutter to keep it off the cafe. He retained the same cyc lighting he had in scene 1, but added more blue. Instead of 3 layers of gel, he used a single layer of medium blue number 132 on all these lights. A 5K Fresnel with full CTO simulated last rays of sunlight in the background of his shot. The 2 5K Fresnels and the white bounce boards were moved back to reduce the light level and to give a greater angle of fill on the actors' faces. For the interior, Robby kept the 5K Fresnel shining through the 216 screen at the front window. The practical fluoro was lowered and directed at the telephone. And an Arri 800 with a quarter blue was bounced off a whiteboard in the top left-hand corner to add a low general ambience.
Roll camera.
Robby is using a 35mm lens, and the stop is again 4 1/3.
My dream is really to be so unseen in a way with my photography that I can lift people out in a dream and put them back in their seat before they even know they were gone. Not giving the alibi of, oh, this was just a film. But that I managed to come so close to them that they cannot escape anymore. And when they go out of the cinema, not talking about the camera, acrobatics and the stunts,
but what the film was about.
It's clear that Robby Muller and Peter James have different aims and approaches. Perhaps this stems from an underlying difference in philosophy, how each feels his talent is best used in the art and in the business of filmmaking. But there are great similarities in the way both achieve their aims on a more technical level. Their masterclass rushes show how each cinematographer has given two isolated script fragments a context and a meaning in many subtle and different ways.
Because it was just a big part of your life, doing this job. I suddenly said to myself, better that doing those films stays very important for my life, that I lived my life at that time too. And I couldn't do that by making products that were geared for making money, because it is a whole organization and a whole other atmosphere and had whole other standards that just did very much conflict with life, for me, life.
You just get behind it. Every photographer is different, and everybody arrives at an image through a different process. Everybody exposes a piece of celluloid a completely different way to everybody else. If you do it your way. If I told you everything I knew and you went out and did it, you'd still do it differently to me, because you're you and I'm me. And that's the wonderful thing about photography.
One of our international cinematographers is missing. Hang on.